Oh, wait. I already did this wrong. It's fine. It's fine. Look,
It's okay.
are we live? I don't even know. Are we live? I can't tell.
I don't know.
Okay, look at our beautiful background. You can't see it. It's fine.
I can't see it.
Say hi.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Okay, there are comments. Everything's working. Software's
All
good.
right.
You look pretty and dead. I look like I have.
Mm,
Um,
Yeah, your teeth are the same color as my skin.
Siberia.
Yay.
This show has a rating. It's rated R.
It's R.
Why is
Yeah.
it rated R?
We're going to talk about suicide and stuff and probably cuss a lot.
Bad words. Yep.
Yeah, bad words.
Yeah, bad words. Okay, everyone's been warned.
Yes. Hide your kids.
And your wife.
You can keep your wife visible if you'd like.
Mine's on the couch.
All
Okay,
right.
what are we gonna talk about? Someone says they can't see me. Christine says
Oh,
she can't see us. I don't know. Can you guys see us? Can you guys see us? Testers.
I can't see shit. You told me to get off the computer.
Hey, you're rated G. I'm rated R. Okay.
I can see both of you or both of us on it when I open it.
Okay, very good. All right. I think you are the only one. All right, what are we going to talk about?
We're going to talk about Suicide Prevention Month because it's Suicide Prevention Month.
Yay.
And we have beefs.
We do.
So we're going to start with beefs, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So first, like what Suicide Prevention Month does?
It's a time in which all of the people who work in the field get really tired.
Yeah. So there's awareness months for basically everything, and suicide is one of those things. And in September, I think most of us in suicide prevention end up doing like 90% of the work we're going to do for the year in this 30-day period. And it is like harrowing and awful for us oftentimes. And I'm not totally sure what the outcomes of actually having a suicide prevention month are for awareness or what we're trying to raise awareness about. Like, we get guides on how to talk about suicide and what we should say and what we shouldn't, but it seems like Suicide Prevention Month is about like platitudes and feel good advocacy and like awareness campaigns that are super pathologizing and talk about like surveilling and screening and monitoring suicidal people. So that is generally like what Suicide Prevention Month looks like to me. Do you have anything to add? Just making you laugh.
Leia left a comment, says beef corner.
Yeah.
It's now the name of this segment.
Yeah, I think sort of the like end point of Suicide Prevention Month is usually that we are going to like run these campaigns, sort of communications campaigns that are like, be afraid of suicide and be afraid of suicidal people. And if you see someone who is struggling, then do a screening on them and maybe call 911 or like potentially your crisis line if you have one.
If you see something, say something.
Yeah, right. Always, if you see something, say something.
Especially
Right. So the sort of end goal of all of this stuff is to drive people to the lifeline. So like full disclosure, I work at a place where we answer the lifeline. I don't think that the lifeline itself is a problem at all. Like I don't think that's the problem. But we have all focused all of our energy on this like one type of intervention that works for some people that also has risk of like some really potentially difficult outcomes. So it could be like coercive interventions, it could be experiences with police, whatever. So we spend probably across the country like millions of dollars trying to push people toward this intervention, push people toward like finding others who are struggling and then connecting them to an intervention that may or may not be something that's helpful or that they want. And sort of some of the things that I see are some of like the things that I have the most problem with in the field sort of take the stage in the biggest way during Suicide Prevention Month. So it's like all of that like dialed up to 11. And sort of this big overarching thing for me is that we sort of push this narrative of like people needing to be like monitored and tracked, and then the only intervention that works is like going to therapy or going to the hospital or having a clinical intervention, and that's not necessarily true for everyone.
Yeah, there's not really room for people to live their lives, and
Yeah.
I mean, we don't all have access to all these things,
Right.
or want
So
to.
what are your beefs, Des?
I forgot what my beefs were. I'm trying to work the tech. It's confusing.
All right.
Or anymore. I don't know.
Okay. Well, I have your beefs written down somewhere.
Good. I forgot to double check that email. I mean, I guess.
Yeah. I think your biggest thing is about like everything that happens in the field has to get crammed into 1 month.
Yeah, that drives me crazy.
Right.
Oh, wait.
And I think it's like not even the month when the most suicides occur, right? So it's like sort of this random time where everybody is they're gonna like check the box to do their suicide thing, and then they're like, oh great, we like solved this problem.
Yeah.
So
seems completely arbitrary, and then it's like, okay, it's Suicide Prevention Month, and then we got to put Suicide Prevention Week in the month, and then World Suicide Prevention Day is in the week in the month.
Right.
Why is it a fucking suicide nesting egg? I don't get it.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
And the other thing for me that comes with this is about during Suicide Prevention Month is when I feel like the safe messaging guidelines rear their head in the most, I mean, it happens all the time, but in the most consistent way. Like you get emails from every organization about like, this is how you can talk about suicide effectively, even though we're not really measuring what it means to be effective or defining that. But like, here's how you message about suicide effectively. This is how you get to talk about and tell your story. And it sort of privileges certain types of stories of suicide attempt survivors specifically, but also survivors of loss doing like those certain types of stories get told and lifted up, and then people also are getting paid. So like you are getting paid to be a speaker that tells your story in a specific way, and none of that, like all of this is this sort of carefully constructed thing to like create suicide or a cultural understanding of suicide that's like very specific and clean and easy to digest, and also sort of reaffirms everything that we believe as a field about what suicide is.
Yeah.
So anything that's outside of that gets pushed aside even more during this month than others.
Yeah. But the main aims of, like, I used to love the guidelines. I've had a whole trajectory about the guidelines. I think they can be useful. I just think that the main aim of them, or the aim that we most focus on, like the contagion piece,
Yeah.
make any sense. Like when the guidelines could be used as a tool to change like attitudes about suicide, to make people more accepting of it, which would then like drive us down paths to like more funding and all kinds of maybe cool things.
Yeah.
That we're focused on contagion, and I don't. It doesn't seem very useful to me.
Yeah. I think that we're like, there's sort of this underlying threat about contagion that gets used to like push people to talk about suicide in really specific ways that really basically are ways that kind of reify the goals of suicide prevention and like force people's stories to support specific narratives about suicide.
Yeah. Yes. Sorry.
And And I think that the like narrative that we're supposed to support is that like, so there's one about loss survivors, which is one that I haven't written stuff about before, but I guess maybe I should now.
Nice.
Or we'll just talk about it here. But loss survivors are, you know, kind of pushed to like tell the story as if like, you know, their loved one fought as hard as they could, and everyone did their best, and now like, you know, they just lost their battle with this like terminal illness.
Right.
So it's this like medicalized understanding. And there's not like real space for people to have like anger about what their loved one went through, or about what their loved one did, or like, you know, any like difficult emotions besides just sadness are kind of written out of that story.
Right.
And any complications about, right, the suicide like decedent, like the person who died is not allowed to be a complex individual anymore. So like all of anything difficult that happened all has to get erased for us to be able to like adequately mourn them or whatever. And I don't think that's what people's real experience is like. And Suicide Prevention Month has this opportunity to potentially be a powerful space for people to come together around like thinking and talking about these issues and potentially doing healing together. But if we only allow one narrative about suicide loss and then also one about suicide attempts, that's never going to happen.
Right.
So really all we're doing is saying like, look at how great suicide prevention is. If you see something, say something, 1-800-273-TALK.
And also suicide rates are going up. So
Yeah, be afraid.
be afraid.
Be afraid. It could happen to anyone. You could just get stricken with a suicide illness. And it can spread throughout your high school if you're not careful.
Yes.
Contagion.
Especially if you watch 13 Reasons Why.
Yes. Yeah, everything bad will happen then.
This season, you might get murdered.
Yeah. Yeah. There's definitely murder now.
Off the path. We've veered into that terrible area that we both hate.
Yes. Let's stay away from 13 Reasons Why as much as possible.
So tell me what a bad suicide attempt survivor.
Why I am?
Yeah.
Well, so first, I still sometimes want to die. So that's bad. Mostly it's because there's this very specific narrative about what it means to be a good suicide attempt survivor, or even just maybe a suicide attempt survivor in general. And it's that you attempt suicide, and then afterwards you're like, oh my gosh, what have I done? I wish I had lived. I wish I had known how all my unsolvable problems are now solvable. I was so stupid for thinking that suicide was the right thing to do. And if I just take my medication and like go to therapy, then I will be like cured and I'll never think about suicide again. And everything will be wonderful and no one has to worry about me. You know, this really is constructed around an idea that like suicide is not something that a sane person would ever want to do.
Right.
So that narrative supports the idea that suicide is like by nature, like insane or crazy or pathological, however you want to describe that. So being a bad suicide attempt survivor is anything you do that maybe portrays suicide in a different way. So if you like wake up and you wish you were dead still, or if you are suicidal more than once, or because then you're treatment resistant, right? Or if you're not compliant, or you don't want to take medications, or you don't want to do therapy, any of those things basically push back against this system that says that being a good suicide attempt survivor means that you know that you had this deep internal flaw that just needed to be fixed, you know, on the couch and with meds, and then you're able to sort of go back to being a productive member of society. So anything that pushes against that makes you a bad suicide attempt survivor. So like if you're not someone who holds down a job consistently, or if you attempt suicide a lot, or if you attempt suicide and directly say it's because of something external to you, like I tried to kill myself because of this other influence, any of those things, resist that narrative, and then also construct suicide as maybe something that's not internal and broken about you, but maybe is something that's going on elsewhere, or is caused by these external factors.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like Live Through This, just the 186 stories, like turn that whole, the part about wanting to die, continuously wanting to die or attempting more than one time, like they kind of turn that on its head, because I do ask that question of everybody, like, is this still an option for you? And most people say yes. Like, it's not that they want it to be an option, but it is, and I would say that for myself as well. So I don't know. The good bad dichotomy is really, really strange.
Right. And I think it's like, I don't think it's necessarily intentional, but it has a benefit to like this system, because suicide prevention sort of comes out of two areas. Like it comes out of like psychiatry and psychology, like we are going to fix something that's broken within you, or it comes from public health, which is looking at like what is the burden that this is placing on society. Like those two pathways to doing suicide prevention set it up so that there are always going to be like some black and white perspectives about this, right? Like you're either well or you're not, or you're getting better or you're not, or your actions or what's happening are creating a burden on society or they're not. Like we look at public health in terms of burden, right?
Yeah.
That's the term that's used. It's not the term I would use, but so they're all deeply rooted and invested in pathology. Because that's the only way we understand it, then everything we do as an intervention, and the way we talk about it as a field, pushes that narrative forward, when there are lots of other ways that we might be able to understand.
Yeah. Apparently, it's very hard to hear me, so
Um,
I'm trying to figure out how to solve that problem by sitting here and looking pretty and also looking confused.
Well,
I
don't. Is it hard to hear me?
No. Let's see. I'm
Oh.
try thing. I mean, according to
Well, that got better,
that feels better.
but now I can hear myself.
It's because I was doing echo cancellation for you because your audio was weird earlier. Can they hear me now? I don't know. Use your outside voice, Carly says. Everybody start screaming. Okay, they can hear me now. All right. Okay.
But they also hear me twice.
They hear you twice? I don't hear you twice.
I can hear.
Well, your ears are telling you things that are wrong.
That's been known to happen for me. Common voice hearing thing, so maybe, well, it's better now.
Jess is
Okay.
echoing now. All right, I guess I'm gonna have to manually work with this.
Okay. Very good.
Yep.
So two narratives: public health, psychology, psychiatry, whatever, suicidology. There's like these two understandings of suicide, and they're sort of set up as the only way we can understand it. And they have very black and white terms that they look at this stuff, because we're measuring everything. Like all of our success is built around measuring, like, did more people die? Which is interesting because like more people keep dying. So I'm not sure how we've decided that like whatever we're doing is working, but more people keep dying, and that leaves out all of this other way, like all these other ways of understanding suicide and what the goals of like suicide prevention might be. And so we're just focused on like constantly trying to fix something inside a person who is broken, like something's wrong with them. They need to be fixed by like medication and treatment. And then by doing that, we will reduce the public health burden of this issue.
Leah says we're disparaging science.
Yes, I am disparaging science. But one kind of science. That's the thing. Like, we could have other sciences. We do have other sciences, but we're not talking about them in suicidology.
There's only one kind of science in suicidology. And like 5 researchers.
So I think kind of where we run into issues is that like we've committed as a field become so singularly focused and committed to this one way of doing this work that everything points to it. Even when we're like, we're going to do an awareness campaign, we're still pointing to like, get this individual person help in this individual moment in crisis, instead of being like, you know, what does it mean to like have this experience and have it be a meaning making experience for someone? Like, what would it be like if we thought about suicide as this like opportunity to understand that something needs to change in someone's life? And it's this really important moment when they're having that realization, and there might be other things that could happen afterwards, instead of treating it like pathology. And we have no space in Suicide Prevention Month, more so than any other month even, to understand or think about suicide differently.
Fella's creeping around doing things. I think she's trying to fix my problem. I'm not sure, but she's being very quiet and like pitter-pattering around, and it's, you know, it's
cute.
It's cute. It's cute. And
very good.
You didn't see me, right?
No one saw you. I don't know what's happening anymore. What else? You look like you're consulting your notes very intensely.
I'm not. I'm looking at these people's comments to see if we can respond to people.
Amelia wants to know if suicide is a multi-component real-life issue.
Oh my gosh, yeah, it's shocking. And you wouldn't know it from our Suicide Prevention Month activities, but yes, probably we should pay attention to those things, like other factors that might drive people to suicide. Like we know that having like financial crisis is a really common precipitating event, and suicide prevention doesn't have anything available for people to support them when they're experiencing financial crisis. They're just like, well, I guess like, yeah, like, sorry, you want to die because you think you and your kids are potentially going to become homeless. I guess we'll lock you up and make sure that you don't get to go to work, and you have to explain to them that you tried to attempt suicide. Like it's just like absurd. Our like thinking, we know that there are issues. We talk about all of these issues that we know are precipitating factors that are common for people, but like do nothing to address the way that these things come up in people's lives and why they're a problem for someone. We just act like the person themselves is the problem.
I don't think they get talked about that much. The CDC just came out with that report last year.
But like, there's been a list of like in like QPR, for example, there's a list of situational clues that someone might attempt suicide, and it has all of those things in them: loss of a job, the loss of a primary relationship, financial crisis, all of that stuff shows up. And that's been in QPR, I don't know, since I got trained in it, which is almost 10 years ago.
Yeah, the fact that you have that memory it's good. It's good. What's happening? Okay. Still trying to solve my audio issue. I'm not sure. Do I have headphones? They were in there.
This? No. This was the phone one.
Oh, motherfucker.
Right.
Yes. They're in my backpack.
Yes. Okay. Headphones.
All right.
Problem.
Everything's breaking.
It's a baby gate.
It's the first episode.
Yeah.
Can you, while we're trying to solve this problem, can you show us your office mates?
Oh yeah. So this is Phil and Will. They're my taxidermy ducks. My friend Sally and Danny gave them to me, and they live in the office with me.
Why did
Two ducks, one body, not one body with two heads.
You're a creep.
That's an important distinction for me.
Well, I guess that's true.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can fix this. Hold on.
Okay.
I mean, keep talking, but
Okay.
how now? Okay. Yes.
Better.
Brown.
Yeah.
Better. Good.
Do we both need to wear headphones? Or am I good?
You definitely sounded better when you wore headphones.
Should I put mine on?
Your headphones are more sexy than mine. Sexier.
That's the wrong word.
More sexier.
But if anyone wanted to know what it looks like when you call someone on a crisis line, they can find out now when I put the headphones on.
Yes. What happens when you call a crisis line?
Well, it probably depends on the crisis line. I have to switch my settings. But I'll tell you what happens to mine. Where's my audio set?
In your butthole.
Mm-mm. That's no zone. We've already talked about this.
Okay.
Is this better?
I think so. Everybody?
Okay.
Look, guys, I'm just going to go on the record and say that audio is the only thing I decided not to care about for this. I was going to save that for next week, and I made a bad choice.
We'll get a microphone or something.
I have a mic in the basement. It's brand new. It's in the box. I didn't want to deal with it. Obviously, having pretty graphics was more important to me.
Okay. Well, next time we will both not wear these. Well, yours are different than mine, but we'll both not wear these, and we will have a microphone.
Okay. Priorities.
Yes. Priorities.
What is happening?
Spell is helping. Okay, you had a question for me.
I don't remember what it was anymore.
Okay. What happens when you call a crisis line? So I think that's a great question. I think that's something that nobody tells you about when they're trying to force you to call about people. And so some of what happens is that, like, first, they probably are going to have some screening questions they have to ask you. So most of us have to take demographic information.
Right.
Usually that's because we're supported by a grant, and we have to be able to tell people, like, what we've done, and who we've served and how we've served them, that kind of stuff. So I think that's sort of a starting off place that's really off-putting to people. If you're calling through the lifeline, it's also going to ask you if you're a veteran and to press 1, which is sort of off-putting and weird to people sometimes. So I think those are things that are complicated. So there's like a couple of different things that happen. I work in a hotline where we are committed to trying to find the least restrictive intervention for people. So we're really trying to figure out what we can do to support someone that's not going to involve things like police intervention and things like that. For some people, for some people, I think their crisis lines are in places where they don't have as many options as we have in Colorado. So people end up really being not having as many options for supporting people, and that's really unfortunate. But so you would call in, we're going to have some screening questions. So we're going to ask everyone that calls our crisis line about suicide, like if they're thinking about suicide and if they've ever thought about it. Then we're trying to see if the person is someone who warrants like a full suicide assessment, and every crisis line is going to define that pretty differently. There are some kind of general standards, but not everyone who calls needs to spend 30 minutes talking about all of their details about their suicidal thoughts. Like,
someone who's kind of consistently consistently thinking about suicide might benefit more from talking about other things that are going on right in that moment than doing a full suicide assessment that's going to tell them the same thing that every other suicide assessment they've ever had is. So here we are looking to understand sort of some basic stuff about someone's suicidal thoughts so that we can decide if they need a full assessment. And then after doing some of those things that like we're required or mandated to do, that's when we'll get back to like being able to talk about whatever it is that motivated that person to call outside of just their suicidal thoughts. And I think that process can be really difficult because, you might be calling about like a fight you had with your partner and also having suicidal thoughts, and we're going to kind of follow this suicide thing for a while because we have to. The other thing that's cool, I think, about where I work is that we have an option for peer support. And the way our peers do this work is really different because they don't do screening and assessment. And they're going to be able to talk about lived experience with people. And like they do have ways of talking about suicide, but they're not going to just be sort of screening to find the like appropriate level of care, things like that. Peers are going to be able to have a different kind of conversation that has less of that power dynamic involved in it. And I think, to me, like if I'm in crisis, I would want to talk to peers, but I don't think that that's what everybody wants. I think sometimes people want like that experience of being suicidal, especially for the first time, is so overwhelming that having someone who can just guide that conversation and help give you options based on what you said is like really important and really helpful. So I think sometimes the way I talk about screening and assessment in other spaces makes it sound like I don't think they have any place or any value. But I do think that some people like and benefit from that. It's just not my ideal way to do the work.
Okay.
But I do, like, I teach people how to do it. I work in a place where we do that. And I think we help a lot of people using those mechanisms. The things that are most scary to me about sort of hotlines as this like thing that we all drive toward is that not every hotline has that same practice about finding the least restrictive intervention. Not every person who picks up the phone, particularly I think in places where people are volunteering and stuff, is going to be able to sit with the fear that if you don't send someone out or if you don't do something right then, that this person is going to die, and that it's like your responsibility to make sure that that doesn't happen at all costs. I think the variety of experience that you can have at a crisis line is part of the problem, and the construction of like the system of like welfare checks and hospitalization as being the highest level of care is a problem to me, and it's not helpful. And so any hotline you call, basically, unless they're anonymous with, there's a few exceptions, like Trans Lifeline's not going to do that. But just the fact that we point people toward one resource that is first like underfunded and oftentimes in many places unprepared to support the amount of people, like the volume of people who need help, and that it's exposing people to this risk that I don't think they know about.
Yeah.
That's sort of the problem to me.
Yeah. You're not wrong. Jessica Blau said she called the Lifeline once and the conversation was so boring it bored her out of her suicidality.
Well, maybe that was their plan.
Bore them back to life.
Yeah. Make suicide so boring that no one wants to do it. No, I mean, I think like the other part is like I think sometimes people call hotlines with really unrealistic expectations about what can happen on a hotline. In your phone call with someone, all of the problems that are happening aren't going to go away. Like to me, the purpose of this work, of like crisis intervention work, is that you don't have to sit alone in that feeling. And someone else might have some ideas. Some of them might help you or some of them might not, but you don't have to sit alone like figuring out whether you want to live or whether you want to die. Someone else can be there with you. So I think having more of a realistic expectation on both sides about what can actually happen in those phone calls is helpful. Like, we're not gonna, just like I said, you don't wake up after a suicide attempt and think like all of my unsolvable problems are suddenly solvable. In a 40-minute phone call or 20-minute phone call, your problems aren't going to become suddenly solvable.
Yeah.
But you might feel differently or have a new perspective or just be able to like get through them better in that moment.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just the kind of first line of defense. Right. Leia wants you to talk about the 988 number. And I know you love talking about that.
Okay. So I think it's connected to all the same stuff I just said, but bigger. Basically, it's like we have this whole network of crisis responders. We all sign up for the Lifeline network, and I don't think there's anything wrong with having a singular number that people can call. But when the National Lifeline is funded, that doesn't mean that every center gets funded, or even any of the centers get funded with that money. Like donating to the Lifeline is not the same as donating to your local center. So there's a sort of stopgap of where money goes. It also sets up this determination that there are national experts who should set the standards for everything that should happen on every local level. So you don't get to do something differently in Colorado, really, than you get to do other places if the standards are set nationally. All of the same people who have been involved in sort of suicide prevention mainstream, get to set the standards about what it means to do a suicide intervention and how people should be like rescued or how they should be assessed. And they're all sort of working together. So like the model that you have to use to do a suicide assessment is based on like the interpersonal theory of suicide, and it's been tested over and over again. And that the person who started that theory is also the person who controls access to the primary journal in suicidology, and so it's all of these sort of systems working together.
I thought we weren't going to do that.
You asked me about the number. So there's this national standard set where like all of the same people who are working on everything get to set the guidelines. All of the same people, by the way, who have not been able to reduce the suicide rate in their entire careers.
Here we go.
These folks get to set the standard, and now we're going to put that number out there. We're going to make it more accessible, easier to access, and nobody's funding the centers any higher volume than they are right now. Like right now, a celebrity dying by suicide can flood the centers with calls, so many calls that they can't pick up the phone. And like, we can't help the people who are begging us to help them right now. A lot of times in a lot of places, we can't afford to do that. And we're talking about making our support that's here more accessible without increasing the amount of support that's available. So you're just going to burn everyone out, and the centers are going to go under. Like, we cannot afford to stay afloat with the amount of volume that we would get from this. And it's irresponsible, right? It's irresponsible to say, like, we're going to help people just by giving them a number to call, but not making sure someone's on the other end.
Right.
And if you think that's suicide prevention, that's some bullshit. Because if you make someone have a wait time of 20 minutes to talk to someone when they're acutely suicidal, when they have a means in hand, like, that's unethical. That's bullshit. And the fact that we're even having a discussion about moving forward on that number without funding crisis services is absurd.
Yeah.
Did I say all the things I wasn't supposed to?
Actually, you didn't name any names.
I didn't.
technically you maybe you stayed within our parameters, which were to
Yeah.
try not to talk shit about people.
Yeah, and it's not
during
like it's
our
not about the
first
person,
episode.
right? It's about this system where they like certain people who have power within suicidology, within suicide prevention, get to continue to like further their work and their perspective, despite the fact that it has not had the impact that we would want it to. So there, if we're not creating space for anything else and we're just doing the same thing but bigger and more, like I don't know why we think that's going to be better.
Isn't that the definition of insanity?
Oh yeah, maybe. But I don't want to be in company with some of those people, so no.
No, in fact.
No, and I think I don't think that any of those individuals are doing anything like individually wrong, but us like not having space for anything else and to just like ramp all of that up without any support for the people who are like doing the actual interventions is really wild to me. Like I don't understand why this is even a conversation. It's like people have like looked at a budget before, right? Like I don't understand. Like nobody in their home is like, okay, so we can afford our cable bill right now, but I would like to have access to more channels so my friends can all come over and watch it. So I'm just going to add all these channels and not pay for that. Like, you don't do that in your regular life. Why would you try and do that with, like, fucking life and death? That's so stupid. That's so stupid. It doesn't make any sense.
I was going to try and make a joke about how you share your cable password with everybody.
I do, but, like, watch out, because Comcast is after me about that.
Are they? I used your password today.
Yeah, sometimes they send me emails and they're like, you were logged on in New York and Philadelphia and Atlanta and Denver at the same time. I'm like,
how many of you are there?
Someone must have gotten my password.
Look, I just really needed to watch Vanderpump Rules today, okay?
Yeah, you were right. You do whatever you want to do. I just keep evading Comcast.
I like it.
Yeah.
So, we got 42 minutes into this bullshit, and you're real serious. We need to get to the and stuff portion of the evening.
I showed Phil and Lil. And stuff.
Only because I was having mic issues, because I was trying to have, like, nice hair instead of headphones, and...
Yeah, that's alright.
My priorities are fucked up.
So when you asked me what other stuff we were going to talk about, I asked if I could talk about ritual suicide, so I am not good at the and stuff part.
We were going to save ritual suicide for, like, another episode.
Yeah, we'll do that another time. I'm just saying the and stuff part is not my strong suit.
I think you should talk about Dungeons and Dragons.
Well, I am in a Dungeons and Dragons campaign, and we are all witches, and mostly we murder everyone and then burn places down behind us. And then we have one person who tries to sort of keep us in line and make sure we don't get killed by an angry mob, but mostly we thwart their efforts to do that.
I don't know. I get a text message every week that's like, tonight we did this. So there was something about making out last week.
Oh yeah, no, I just have a girlfriend. So there was a non-playable character that I liked a lot, and then I forced our DM to let her be a playable character if we saved her from a dwarf or something. I don't really know the difference between dwarves and gnomes also, in addition to not knowing the difference between seals and sea lions. So anyway, I was just trying to canoodle with my girlfriend last time. Canoodling. But then we had to murder a bunch of people again.
Did the girlfriend help murder?
Oh yeah. She also saves us when we almost die.
I see.
She's a cleric.
Wow.
Yes. Cleric.
Okay.
What are you going to talk about and stuff?
I got to roll a really big 20-sided die last week.
Ooh, did you roll? Did you do a critical fail?
I don't know what that means.
A 1.
No.
What'd you roll?
I rolled a 12.
That is
think
a
it was
medium
12.
roll.
Very good. Look at me.
Yeah.
Extra medium. Yeah, that was dumb. That was for Ask Me Another. That was before I was offended.
Can you talk about Ask Me Another?
I guess.
I want to tell us about the suicide thing from Ask Me Another.
So, to get on Ask Me Another, the NPR comedy game show business, you have to take an online quiz and prove that you're like kind of smart and that you can do word games or whatever. And I only cheated like a little bit. Not too much. I was just.
But tell us about the suicide part.
Hold on, I'm getting there. Slow build.
I only care about suicide.
Okay, so you have to take the quiz, and then I am getting to the suicide part. If they like your answers, the producer will call you and interview you about, who you are, what you do, hibbity-doo. And, obviously always the first thing out of my mouth is like, I do suicide stuff. Yay! And the producer was super fine with it. We had a great conversation. I told her I'm obsessed with trying to figure out if Taylor Swift is gay, to do the suicide stuff, gay adoption, like all kinds of things. I gave her lots of content. She wrote it all down in her notes for the host, Ophira. And then I got there that night, and the producer who was there, who's not the one who originally interviewed me, she was like, I need to talk to you about some things. And she was like, I want to ask some more questions just to like add some extra content to your bio for the host. And I was like, okay, cool. She said, what are you an expert at? I was like, suicide. And she was like, no, you can't. We're not gonna. I was like, no, but like I know, like actually, it's the stuff that I do every day. And she was like, I know, but. And I was like, okay, so Tori Amos. Like,
how is that not about suicide?
Well, okay, fine. You're not wrong.
Oh, maybe that's about self-harm.
Yes, that's about cutting yourself and crying.
Yeah.
I think we said we weren't going to make that joke too, but it happened. We're not good.
Well, yeah, I can never avoid that joke.
Okay, you're right. So she was like, no, you can't say that. The host really wants to keep the show about comedy, and I was like, I have plenty of content. I'm funny, and also I like this other stuff. They can all exist together. And she was like, I know, but like, And I was like, all right, fine. She was like, she will at least say your job title online. And I was like, okay, that's good enough. Or on while we're live. And I was like, that's fine. If someone hears the word and is curious, they can Google my name or whatever. And that was acceptable, even though it wasn't my favorite thing. So I get up on the stage, and she announces me as Dese'Rae Stage, artist and photographer. And I was like, oh, you're just going to edit that right out. You're going to sanitize me for fun, right?
Gross.
Like, I think Fel says that she didn't see it, but I feel like there was like a physical... I feel like I stepped back or something. Like, I was real mad. Big mad, as they say. Children on the internet.
Yes. The youths.
The youths. So, yeah, I got through the show. I'm currently trying to strategize about what I'm going to do about that.
Yeah.
Because I don't think it's okay. Like, it's like a micro application of everything the attempt survivor and lived experience community has been dealing with forever. It's like,
yeah.
Who the fuck are you to tell me that my experience is not okay with you? Like, I do not give a fuck.
Or like that your work isn't okay. Like
also
doing
that.
Suicide work is bad. Like, what's that about? I thought so. It's interesting because like because I only ever talk about suicide, and that's everyone in my life is used to that, I think. I forget that there's people who like never have conversations about this. Right. So I'm over here being like, stop making us into all having to be good survivors, which is like legitimate. But then there's also this part about like, hey, we could talk about suicide. And I actually don't think, bringing it back to Suicide Prevention Month, hey. I don't think that Suicide Prevention Month is necessarily furthering that, because the way we talk about it all seems like it's this way of like pushing like the liability and the conversation onto someone else. We're like, okay, so if you see someone struggling, you can ask them about suicide, but then it's just to connect them to a crisis worker or a therapist or whatever, and then that becomes their responsibility. And then if you're too suicidal for them, then they can pass you off to a hospital. And then if you're like not being good in the hospital, like you're non-compliant, we can lock you up forever, or we can like literally kick you out of services. Like there are people who are not allowed to get treatment at mental health centers anymore, or not allowed to get treatment from hospitals anymore because they're like treatment resistant, or they are aggressive or whatever, abusive. And so like we have this whole system that like pushes you towards something and pushes all this liability around, and then when you're like too complicated for this system that we forced you into to begin with, then we kick you out.
Is this a good time to talk about frequent flyers and how I was really clever? And you can't see this right now, Jess, but I was really clever with my paper airplanes. That's symbolic of frequent flyers.
So at our organization, we call them familiar voices.
I know.
Because frequent flyers is a shitty term and people shouldn't use it, but everyone does in the field. I think like people have like a lot of anger and resentment toward folks who are frequent utilizers of crisis interventions, or people who are suicidal a lot. Like that's when you're like suicidal one time, then we feel like we can rescue you and stuff, and we like really want to help you. But if you're suicidal a lot, then you're just like a burden and you're an asshole for not getting better. And we will like definitely treat you that way and use more restrictive and more abusive like interventions.
Yeah. That was one of my favorite parts of the S word when Fel called me an asshole, because I'm not easy to deal with when.
Yeah. Right. And like, so like, I'm not cute when I'm suicidal either. Like, I'm not just sad. I am really mean and really aggressive when I'm not well. And like, there's like no space for that in mental health services, which is really screwed up. And it's like, so like, as the suicidal person, like, you didn't sign up to feel that way, but the other person did sign up to provide fucking services for you. So like, suck it up. Just like, if you can't hold the space for someone to feel like that, how the fuck do you expect them to live through that experience?
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. We could do a whole episode on that.
We could.
If you want to.
I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to it. I guess we have to like do this some more and have more content.
Yes. The good thing is I have no shortage of things to say about suicide, because I never shut up about it.
We should have just called this like yelling about suicide.
Did I yell?
No.
Well, sometimes I do.
Oh, I know.
I think I used a yelling tone.
Your yelling tone?
Yeah, like the teacher voice.
Yeah.
That I'm disappointed in you, suicide prevention voice. I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed.
Oh, yes. Yes, that's a good one.
Yeah, that's what I would like to say to suicide prevention.
I'm not mad at you.
It's not true, I'm mad. It would be a lie.
Well, I mean, when you tell them, they just like ignore you or deflect. So.
Yeah.
Or get mad at you and talk about you behind your back, and
that's true too.
It's fine.
Yeah. So we have 6 minutes left. Do you have final thoughts?
SPSM verbiage. I'm just finally like not afraid of the technology, and now it's about over.
Yes.
So.
Well, that's good, because next time we'll start out unafraid.
Unafraid. I mean, no, something will still happen. You know that.
Fearless.
Like a Taylor Swift album.
No. I made a promise to myself that I wouldn't publicly disparage you about Taylor Swift.
You've already done that publicly many times.
Right now. Today.
I see.
I'm not publicly disparaging you.
I mean, not verbally. That poo-poo faces.
Yes, I have not verbally disparaged you. I'm making a poop face.
So wait, we are doing this again. I haven't made an event yet. What day is it? We're doing this next week. Next Tuesday at 11 a.m.
Yeah, 11 a.m.
Eastern.
Eastern, 9 a.m. my time.
And that will not be our usual time, but we're trying to get some more episodes in during Suicide Prevention Month because,
Yeah.
we're going to have a lot to yell about. It's only the 3rd day of September.
Yeah. Maybe next time I'll look at some of the things that people are posting on the internet for Suicide Prevention Month and yell about those.
Oh, yeah. Or, this Amelia just told us we need to calm down. If anybody wants to make some suggestions for topics of conversation for another episode, do that in the comments.
I thought you were going to say if anyone has suggestions about how to calm down.
No, that's yoga.
Oh, right. Yeah, I know
breathing.
these. Meditation.
Right. The same
Have
list.
you tried stop eating sugar?
Why would I do that?
I don't know. People think that that's helpful.
I know, they're wrong. I don't like that. Like, they might be right, but they're wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Well, so we're doing this again in a week, but at a different time.
Yes. In a morning time.
In the morning time.
There will be coffee.
Yes, coffee will be good. I'll bring Phil and Lil again.
Maybe I'll have Theo, because it'll be morning
You can put a baby on the screen.
Yeah, put a baby on the screen.
Yeah.
Put a baby on it.
Yeah.
Way better than birds.
Well, and hopefully people liked us and still want to hear us complain about suicide. Or as Phil likes to call it, making out about suicide.
Making out about suicide. Whenever you come and sit on my couch, that's what we do. We just talk and talk about suicide until 3 a.m. And she goes to bed and she says, we're making out about suicide.
Y'all, every week. Well, every time I'm there. Not every week. That's what we're doing here.
Yeah.
For a minute.
Amelia wants to know what our viewers should do this month. Complain about it. Complain about suicide.
Yeah. Complain about suicide. No, I think that some of the best things that you can do are like listening to the stories of people who have been through stuff. So listening to survivors of loss, listening to suicide attempt survivors and asking them what they need and then do that.
I like that. I like that answer. Wait, let's see. I'm gonna tell them where they can go. Even though everyone who's watching this knows about this thing we talk about a lot.
Where they can go.
Livethroughthis.org.
Oh yeah, go to Live Through This.
I'm trying to put my paws where the text is, but I have no spatial. Okay.
Yeah, go to Live Through This.
Go there.
There's really good stories.
Lots of stories of all different kinds of people.
Mm-hmm.
And they said good stuff.
They do. And I like getting familiar with all of the different, like the different types of stories there are is really helpful to just remember that we're not like some monolithic group who has the same experience.
Yeah. And like, we don't all look the same. Like maybe you and me look like we probably at least thought about it once.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think people are like with our sad tattoos, people aren't like surprised. By the way,
and my cultural appropriation tattoo, I'm sorry, I was young.
If everyone can just like bully Des a little bit about this, she says she's like not gonna stick and poke anymore with me, and I don't understand because we have sad tattoos that are very cool, and she's ruining it.
You're mean, and that's why mine looks better than yours.
Yeah. I don't understand because you used to cut yourself, so you should be better at poking.
No, that was self-inflicted.
Yeah.
It wasn't inflicting on others.
Okay.
Don't you remember how gingerly I was holding your hand as I poked it with the needle?
I know, I was mad about it.
Well, next time I'm just going to stab you in the face.
Good, then I need a face tattoo.
I mean, you do. You need my face on your face.
It'll be awkward for everyone, I think.
Probably. It'd be pretty weird.
Yeah. Well, Is that our ending point? I guess that's the end.
Maybe. Wait, can our
That's
suicide
a thought.
spring break party next year have stick and boats?
Yes. That's dangerous and bad.
Yeah. This
We
party's
do
getting
host
more and more
we
dangerous.
do host a party called Suicide Spring Break every year. In case you thought we didn't talk about this constantly, we do.
Yep.
All right.
We don't have content other than that.
Just suicide content.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for listening to us and
Yay.
commenting a lot.
Yeah. So many comments. We did a good
Yeah.
job. Yay,
I'm gonna
guys.
try and go through and respond to people.
Maybe I will do that too.
Okay.
Maybe. And
Cool.
maybe
We'll
I'll
see
eat
some of you
dinner.
next week.
Yes. Next
Yeah.
week in the morning times.
In the morning times. I will find some more complaints. So don't worry.
Please direct your complaints to suicide and stuff.
Yeah. Let us know if you have topics you want us to address, because we'll do it.
Sounds good.
All right. Bye.
Bye.